This program is made possible in part by Cerisi Conlon LLP, protecting the future and using the law as a force for good in both the courtroom and our communities. Online at cerisiconlon.com.
Hello and welcome. I'm so glad you could be with me. We have a very special guest tonight. As many of you know who've watched the show for years, I've been interviewing leaders for an ongoing series called Minnesota Leaders, and they're usually statesmen or people who've gotten into their elder years, done a lot of things that are hugely successful. Well, tonight I'm interviewing a young leader, and he's quite young. He's a senior in high school. His name is Zarion Irby, and he has excelled in his young life in academics, in sports, in music. I'll find out more as we visit. I'm sure there are other things. And he's just a most interesting young man. I first heard him present a spoken word piece about a year ago at Minnehaha Academy, where he's a senior this year. And I thought, I've got to get this young man on the show and share what I heard with you, because I was so struck by a piece he wrote called Breathe. And we're going to hear him recite that later. But first, I'll introduce you to him, and we'll learn more about life in Zarion Irby. So welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're so welcome. It's great that it finally worked out.
I know.
When I first invited him, he was too busy. His life is packed. And so we decided we'll try again later. So I invited him now. Well, he's still very busy, but you can do it this time, and that's great. Sort of fill me in and the viewers, what keeps you so busy right now?
Well, like you said, I'm a senior in high school right now, so I've been doing a lot of college applications during this time. So I just finished applying to all my early action schools in November, and now I'm kind of applying to my regular decision school. So I'm doing a lot of college stuff, and also just prepping for my upcoming track season in the spring. So I've been working on getting in shape and things like that. So that's been on my mind a lot, as well as just school and academics in general, because that's important to me as well. So I've been having to maintain kind of school as well as college applications and prepping for the season. So just different things like that, yeah.
And I have heard that the college application process is daunting. I mean, it's not a simple thing anymore.
Yes, it is not.
Not at all. You have to write essays and make a lot of early decisions too, don't you?
Yes, so I've been writing you have the Common App application where you can just write a Common App essay, and then you're gonna have supplementals for each school that you're gonna have to do that are close to 250 to 500 words. So it's been a lot of just writing and writing a lot, but yeah.
And you're considering schools of small schools, large schools, Ivy League schools, more local schools, right?
Yes.
Tell us the Ivy League schools. You had mentioned one or two to me.
Yes, so I'm applying to Princeton, and then I think I'm going to apply to Stanford. I haven't made my mind up about that yet, but so those are kind of the two Ivy League schools I'm applying to, I guess. But I'm also applying to a lot of HBCUs because I feel like that type of culture will be something that's good for me, and obviously some local schools because I want to just widen my pool so I can make like the best decision for me regarding money and just
Scholarship
education, yeah,
offers,
everything.
hopefully, right?
Because that's definitely a factor for sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a big process. And some of the schools, you have to make a decision if they accept you before you even know what they're going to give you for aid, I've read.
Yes, so that's like the early decision versus early action. I didn't apply to any of my schools' early decision because I didn't want to be like binded to a school that I like didn't know if I was going to have a certain amount of money for. So I did all of my schools early action or just regular decision. That way I wouldn't be like trapped into going to a school if I was.
So you had a choice to do it one way or
Yes.
another. Okay, that's good to know. You grew up in North Minneapolis.
Yes.
Still live in North Minneapolis. North Minneapolis, in the eyes of some people, is like a dangerous place to live.
Mm-hmm.
Have you felt it's dangerous?
I mean, I feel like a lot of times it gets a bad rep for being like super dangerous, and I feel like that's kind of just the surface level view of what people are seeing. I feel like there's a lot of community in North Minneapolis. I feel like there's a lot of people who are striving to do good work there. I mean, the church that I go to, Sanctuary Covenant Church, is like in the center and kind of the heart of North Minneapolis on West Broadway, and they're doing a lot of good work and just trying to better our community. So, I mean, there is obviously going to be violence and different things that happen in certain communities because I feel like that's just our world. That's kind of what we live in. But I feel like a lot of the times we're getting surface level things that aren't entirely true, or people are making it out to be worse than it is. It definitely is and can be bad, but I feel like a lot of the times people are focusing only on the bad things and not on the good things that are happening within our community. So
Even my question, you know,
yeah,
is it a dangerous place? I mean, that shows some reflection from the media's description of it,
right,
and some obvious misinformation and some truth and
right,
some of each, right?
mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm asking him these questions because besides talking about the pressures of being young, we're going to talk about specifically some of the pressures of being young and black and male. So that fits in terms of my mindset here. But first, just some of the pressures of being almost 18 and growing up in a world where there is so much violence, not just racial violence. There's world, wars going on. There's climate scares and fears and realities. What kind of worries you the most in terms of overall living?
I feel like I'm worried about like so many different things at once. I feel like a big worry of mine is just like what my future has to entail. Like, where am I going to be in the next 10 years? What is the world around me going to look like? And I feel like with that fear comes the want to just do anything that I can right now, or I have the ability to do, to make that future world like a better place in a sense. So I feel like that fear of the future and what that entails is really big on my mind, for sure.
So that's the pressure that you're sort of putting on your shoulders to make a difference. Is that a accurate way to?
Yes, and I've really put that pressure on myself a lot. I feel like even my parents tell me all the time I take on too much, and that in turn leads me to be very stressful a lot of the time. So I've kind of had to sit and reflect and think I can't take on the whole world. I can't do everything at once. So I need to just take a minute to take a breath sometimes, and just take care of myself, whatever that means, and yeah.
Yeah, whatever that means, and
Yeah.
that's hard to define some days, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it's hard to know how to take care of yourself sometimes
Right.
when you're juggling so many things at once.
Right. Well, as I promised in the intro, I want to have Zarion perform his spoken word piece, and we're going to do that and then share it with you. This is a piece that you wrote a couple years ago,
Yes.
and he performed, as I mentioned, at his school, Minnehaha Academy, and I heard you then. So can you just talk for a minute about how the process worked to put this down, and then you'll get to hear him.
Yes, for sure. So originally, it was for a sort of choir concert that we put on at Minnehaha Academy called The Review, and the center around it was impact that year. So what can we as young people do to impact our world with music and just the arts in general? And my choir teacher asked me, well, actually she asked for suggestions, and I already had written part of it earlier. So I wrote part of it during right after George Floyd, and that is what inspired me to do it. I was at school and I had seen the video, and it just befuddled me. Like, I don't know if that's a word, but it was just something hard to take in.
Yeah.
So I kind of wrote out that first part of the spoken word, and then when she asked me for suggestions, I wrote the rest of it, entailing kind of just the general world and what's going on in our world regarding school shootings, regarding police brutality, and what it's like for me to live
So it
in a world
became
like this.
broader in a
Yes,
sense
it became
as
broader.
as you worked on it.
Yeah, in the end, kind of focused more on that music aspect and kind of how music relates to how I express things. Yeah.
You will get to hear now Zarion Irby reciting Breath, and then we'll come back and talk more about it.
To breathe. One simple movement of your lungs expanding and contracting. A function that happens in all bodies. When you breathe, you are filled with life. When you breathe, your hair stands on the edge of your skin as you begin to feel the calmness and restoration that comes with a breath. When you breathe, there is a second in which the whole world ceases to stop. A second in which you no longer feel the trauma of your life, but rather the peace of that breath. When you breathe, an overwhelming sense of home courses through your veins, reminding you that you never want to go without breath again. But that is the thing, it is getting hard for me to breathe. It is getting hard for me to breathe because I look at the world around me and see violence. Another black man shot dead, screaming out for his mother as he's beaten by police. Another black boy witnessing the world telling him he's undeserving. It is getting hard for me to breathe because I'm constantly saying the names of black people murdered by police. I'm constantly watching Black lives turn into trendy hashtags to make my white counterparts feel a little bit more liberal. It is getting hard for me to breathe because everywhere I turn, there is another race to run, another battle to fight, another hill to climb, another body to bury, and I don't know whether or not it will be mine. I am operating on a manual breath because society isn't allowing me the courtesy of an automatic one. My chest is under the pressure of the entire world, slowly taking away the little breath I have left. So when do I get to breathe? When do my lungs get to be filled with privilege? When do my lungs get to be filled with safety? When do my lungs get to be filled with joy? When do I get to breathe? And as I reflect on the question, I realize that it is not only that I can't breathe, or that I'm not allowed to breathe, or even simply that I haven't tried. No, our world has been so infused with chaos, violence, and fear that it has intoxicated our air to the point where it is no longer breathable. An atmosphere that allows 6-year-olds to be face down with the barrel of a gun, not knowing if it was recess they were missing that day, not knowing if it was snack time they were missing that day, not knowing that their teacher would lay down their life for their best friend that day, not knowing if they were going to miss out on the rest of their lives. An atmosphere in which a human is placed in a box, categorized, sorted, disordered in order to mesh with the walls closing in little by little. That is not your body, they say. That is not your choice, they say. That is not the love you are supposed to have, they say. That is not the political party you are supposed to belong to, they say. That is not the manner of tone you are supposed to speak in, they say. They say, they say, they say, they say. The words filling the air, toxifying and constraining. The question is, are they right? Do I get to breathe? Do you get to breathe? Do we get to breathe? This is the place where we answer those questions. Take a breath in and another out, and sing. Carry a note that carries the groundwork for our future. We want to be the impact that provides the next generation with a breath of fresh air, not befuddled with the toxicity of the air we breathe now. A breath of peace, a breath of joy, a breath of love.
Well, if you're like me, having seen that now, you want to sort of take a moment and breathe and think and ponder. And I'm guessing that my reaction of being so impressed and affected by it is one that other people have told you they feel
Yes,
likewise.
for sure. Yes.
Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I bet. Had you realized as you were writing it that it was going to have that kind of impact on other people?
Honestly, not really. I was kind of just writing it out of kind of the state I was in and what I was feeling at the time. And afterwards, I kind of got the idea that a lot of people were impacted by the words of the piece, which, you know, feels good because it's something that you put a lot of work into, but yeah.
Right, it must feel very good to know that it was something people really listened to and took seriously and thought a lot about. I want to ask you a few questions about your experience. As you put it, I'll let you explain it more. There is sort of a constant awareness that you've got to be on guard to some degree. Mm-hmm. Can you explain how that sort of affects you in a daily way?
Yes. I mean, I feel like it's more like almost a cloud looming over you. Like you always have this thought in the back of your mind, even when you're just driving normally, going to school, going to work, just, can I get pulled over at any time? I feel like I just got my car this year, and those were the type of conversations I had before anything else with my parents. I was, how are you going to deal with the police when you encounter that type of thing? And I feel like that's something that's important for me and my safety, for sure.
So people often say, have your parents had the talk with you, right?
Yes.
And that means hands on the wheel if you're pulled over.
Mm-hmm. Hands on the wheel or on the dashboard in front of you.
Don't reach for the glove compartment, right?
Don't reach for anything.
Right.
Yeah, and I've always had the instinct to call my parents first, and that's what I would do in a situation, call my parents before anything else. Yeah.
Are there certain things that you do, Zarion, that are kind of almost maybe in the, maybe fitting the word preventative, so that you don't get in trouble, you don't overreact, or
I mean, I feel like you always have to be kind of walking on eggshells in a sense. Like just making sure you're driving safely and doing all the correct things so you can't be pulled over. But even doing everything correctly, there's always going to be a time where it doesn't matter what you're doing correctly, you can still get pulled over.
Yeah.
Just by the way you look. So even with preventative measures, you can still always get pulled over. I mean, I always make sure I have my wallet and my license with me and in reach before I go anywhere. So just little things like that where I need to make sure that I do before I actually pull off in my car or anything.
So driving in cars, what about other situations, shopping, going to events? Are there things that you consciously are doing differently than maybe I would be doing?
I mean, with shopping, that has always been on my mind, because when I've had experiences when I've walked into stores and just I can feel there's an atmosphere shift. I can feel like people in the stores are almost uncomfortable just by my mere presence of walking in. So it's making sure I almost have to code switch and adjust to that environment. But also, I should be able to walk into a store and not feel that way.
Right.
So I shouldn't have to change or do anything differently from what I would usually do, because I know that that's not the type of person I am.
Does that make you mad? Does it make you sad? What is the initial reaction?
I mean, it's frustrating because obviously it's I'm constantly having to adjust to fit, to make other people feel comfortable when I shouldn't have to do that.
Right.
So it's kind of just, it's annoying just having to always adjust and adapt to other people.
I'm sure.
For sure.
Do you think your white non-black friends get it? Do you think they realize kind of the burden, in a sense, that you carry?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's never a point where they're going to understand fully, but I also feel like it depends on who your friends are. I mean, I've done plenty of work to make sure I actually have that my friends who are not black or people of color are friends that are actually important to me and who have my best interests at heart, because that's not always going to be the case when you're choosing your friends, because I feel like you have to be analytical in who you're choosing as a person of color, of who you're going to be friends with. You want to be friends with people who are not afraid to be uncomfortable and have tough conversations, and not be friends with people who are going to shy away from the uncomfortable conversations because they want to stay comfortable living in their own ignorance. Because at the end of the day, they're more comfortable living in their ignorance rather than being a good friend to you. So making sure you have people around who care about your well-being, who are not afraid to step outside the box and have those hard conversations, I feel like is super important when choosing your friend group, and specifically people who are not black or people of color.
Yeah, it would be very important and crucial. At your school now, do you feel that there is any prejudicial behavior going on that you're having to deal with?
I would say at my school in particular, I don't feel that as much. I feel like my school has been pretty liberal when it comes to just the atmosphere, I guess. Yeah, I haven't felt a lot of prejudice in terms of the color of my skin. I mean, I feel like the main thing that my school needs to work on is just making sure we're addressing the daily things that are happening in life, daily events that are happening when we're talking about people of color and what's happening in the world. When a black person is shot, we need to address that. When we're having conversations about Palestine and Israel, we need to address that and actually have conversations about it rather than pretending it's not happening, because those things are affecting us outside of school, and we can't be expected to focus on school when we're also dealing with those things outside of school.
Right. There's only so much time to. Right. But open, honest dialogue is always good, right? Mm-hmm. Right. Well, we're out of time already. We could talk on and on here. And again, I want to thank you so much for coming down and sharing breath. It's so powerful.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Oh, of course, and sharing yourself in such a vulnerable and honest way, Zarion. I really appreciate it. Mm-hmm, so I'm sure the viewers will too. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's nice to meet you.
Thank you for joining us. I'll be back again next week. Maybe we can get Zarion to come back after he goes to college for a few years and give us an update.
Yeah.
So see you next week.